Okay, let's talk about the morning after pill. You've heard of it, of course, but there is so much confusion floating around out there. So, in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all that noise and get straight to the facts. So, let's just dive right in with the biggest question of all. How does this pill actually work? I mean, really think about it for a second. Do you know what's happening on a biological level? Hey, if you're a little fuzzy on the details, you are so not alone. Get this, a study in 2021 found that a whopping 60% of people got that question wrong. 60%! That's a massive misunderstanding, and it's exactly why we're going to break this all down today. All right, so here's the game plan. We'll start with the most common misunderstanding, then do a quick dive into the science of ovulation. After that, we'll see how the pills really work, why the name morning after is just wrong, and we'll tackle that big question about future fertility. Finally, we'll look at the whole picture when it comes to emergency contraception.
So a huge part of the problem, it actually starts with the name. The morning after pill. Honestly, that's a terrible name, it's a huge misnomer, and it sets up a totally wrong idea about how this thing works from the get-go.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around how these pills work, we first need to understand the one big event they're designed to stop, and that event is ovulation. So buckle up for a super quick biology lesson. I promise it'll be painless. All right, so every month, the body gears up for a potential pregnancy. It all starts with these things in the ovaries called follicles. You can think of them as these little protective, fluid-filled sacs that hold immature eggs. They start to grow, and eventually one of them kind of takes the lead and becomes the dominant one. Then comes the main event, the trigger. The brain sends out a signal and bam, the pituitary gland releases this huge wave of a hormone called luteinizing hormone, or LH for short. You got to remember this LH surge because it's basically the starting gun for ovulation. And that big LH surge, that's the signal that tells that dominant follicle, okay, it's time to go. It ruptures and releases the egg, and that right there is ovulation. Now, once that egg is out, the clock is ticking. It's only viable for about 24 hours, a super short window. Okay, one last hormone to put on your radar, progesterone. It plays a big role in signaling ovulation and prepping the uterine lining. Now, I want you to file that name away, progesterone, because it is absolutely key to understanding how one of the main types of these pills actually works. All right, science lesson, check. Now that we have that background, we can finally get to the heart of it all. How do these pills actually do what they do? It's probably not what you think. Okay, let's get this out of the way right now, because it's the biggest misconception out there. Emergency contraceptive pills are not abortion pills. Let me say that again, because it is so important. They are not abortion pills. They work by preventing a pregnancy from even starting. They do this by delaying or just plain stopping that key event we just talked about, ovulation. So it turns out there are actually two main types of pills. First, you've got levonorgestrel. That's the active ingredient in Plan B and a bunch of others. What it does is kind of mimic progesterone to mess with that LH surge we talked about. But here's the catch. For it to work, you have to take it before that LH surge begins. Then there's the other type, ulipristal acetate. It works a little differently. It actually blocks progesterone receptors to delay ovulation. And the really big difference? It can still be effective even if the LH surge has already started. That gives it a slightly bigger window to work in. And this is why that whole morning after name is just so misleading. It makes you think you only have a day or that you should wait until the morning, but that's not the full story at all. It's all about the timing of ovulation. Yeah, check this out. This really shows why there's more time than you might think. Sperm can live inside the reproductive tract for up to 5 days. Seriously, 5 days. So, let's say unprotected sex happens on day 0, but you don't actually ovulate until day 3. Well, pregnancy is still a possibility. So by taking a pill that pushes ovulation even further down the road, it can still be effective days later. But, and this is a really, really big but, sooner is always better. Always. The whole point is to delay ovulation before it happens. So the faster you take the pill, the better its chances of working. There is zero reason to wait until the morning after. Just take it as soon as you can. Okay, next up, we need to talk about a big one. A really common fear that's out there about emergency contraception, and that's, what does it do to your future fertility? Let's just put the question right out there. Can taking these pills, even if you've had to take them more than once, mess with your ability to get pregnant down the line when you actually want to? And the answer, based on just mountains of scientific evidence, is a very clear and resounding no. We have literally decades of research showing that this just isn't the case, even for people who have taken emergency contraceptives multiple times.
The reality is the effects of the hormones in these pills are super short-lived. They're in and out of your system pretty quickly. That's why they don't offer any continuing protection for the rest of your cycle. It's a one-and-done dose for a specific situation. And yep, that means it's safe to use again if you need to.
Now, it's really important to know that pills aren't the whole story. They aren't the only option for emergency contraception. There's another method that's incredibly effective, especially in a few key situations.
So what happens if you're past that window? What if you've already ovulated? Well, that's the biggest limitation of the pills. If that egg is already released, they just can't do anything.
And that's where the copper IUD comes into the picture. Now, a lot of people know it as a super effective long-term form of birth control. But guess what? It's also the single most effective form of emergency contraception. It works in a totally different way from the pills, so it can still prevent a pregnancy even after ovulation. This chart is great because it lays everything out so clearly. You can see the two pills on the left both work by delaying ovulation, which is why they're no-goes if ovulation has already happened. But then look at the copper IUD. Its mechanism is totally different. It's toxic to sperm and also prevents implantation. That's why it works after ovulation. And of course, the other huge difference is that it can stay in and work as long-term birth control for up to 10 years. So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing you should remember? I think it's this. Understanding the science behind your own health, behind your options, it's not just trivia. It's empowerment. Knowing how things actually work, well, that's the key to making the best possible decisions for you. Thanks so much for tuning in.